Now a broadcast by the leader of the Liberal Democrats, the Right Honourable Paddy Ashdown.
61 years ago, this country had to make a difficult decision. Hitler had invaded a small nation in Eastern Europe. Should we or shouldn't we intervene? The Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, said this was a quarrel in a faraway country between people of whom we know nothing. That faraway country was Czechoslovakia. Britain decided not to intervene, and we all know what followed. Some say that what is happening in Kosovo today is none of our business either. I understand why they say that, but let me tell you why I believe they are wrong. The television coverage is brutal enough, but there on the ground, believe me, it is worse. I was in Kosovo recently. I was there when the Albanian villages were being shelled and burned and looted, and I spoke with the women and children, their homes in flames, fleeing for refuge in the forests and in the winter snows. And their faces haunt me still. How then, if we know of all this, and if we know we can help, how can we choose not to? How can we switch off those pictures, shut the door on those faces, and still think of ourselves as civilized people? There is, of course, more. All modern nations depend for their security on international law. International law, which is not upheld, threatens all of us, however distant we might like to think we are. And President Milosevic is a lawbreaker, coldly, repeatedly, and brutally. President Milosevic has broken international laws and flouted the resolutions of the United Nations. How then, if we know all this, and if we know we can do something, how can we choose not to? And then, twice already this century, conflicts in the Balkans, starting as no more than the flicker of a flame, have developed into raging infernos, sweeping across whole nations and plunging millions into war. I know this with a terrible certainty. If the killing in Kosovo is not stopped now, if that Kosovan fire is not extinguished, there will be another such inferno. We knew all this, and we knew we could help. The Albanians pleaded with us to help. We had to help. We may indeed have waited too long. I think we did. But I respect those who say, keep talking, keep hoping, keep looking for anything other than war. I've been a soldier, and I hate war. I know what it means to the men and women caught up in war, and I know what it means to their families. And when putting the grim argument for war, I do not forget those who are asked to fight it. But I suspect that they, too, know that it is the right thing to do. Today, Sunday the 28th of March, we have to live with the knowledge that the plight of the Kosovan Albanians is worse than it was a week ago, before the NATO offensives began, because President Milosevic has responded with vile new levels of atrocity. It was bound to be. The Albanians themselves told me last year that they knew it was bound to be, and still they begged us for help. And I've heard from Kosovo today. They're begging us now, don't stop. Don't leave the job half done. This action will not be tidy, and it will not be short. This is no Hollywood combat to be won in a few glorious days and nights. The hope is this, that if we take out his military bases and his tanks and his heavy artillery, Milosevic will come back to the negotiating table. I hope so, but I'm not optimistic. And we have to be clear what will happen if he does not. To have risked the lives of our forces, to have lifted the hopes of the Kosovan Albanians, only to turn our backs again, leaving Kosovo still fractured and unstable, that would be insanity. The cold reality is this. By their actions, the Serbs have forfeited their right to govern Kosovo, where they're only 5% of the population. But we cannot, without destabilizing its neighbors, give immediate independence to Kosovo either. This leaves only one honorable choice, an international protectorate in Kosovo for as long as it takes to secure peace in the Balkans. And yes, you're right. That does mean troops on the ground. How many? We can't assess that yet. For how long? It's impossible to say. I only know that whatever the cost, it'll be less than that of a widening war in the Balkans.
That was a broadcast by the leader of the Liberal Democrats, the Right Honourable Paddy Ashdown. This is LWT, part of the ITV network. The time, is 6:15.
NATO's first loss, but a dramatic rescue for the pilot. Serbs bolster their defences as more refugees flee. And Blair and Ahern appeal for an Ulster breakthrough.
From ITN, the ITV Weekend News with Nicholas Owen.
Good evening. NATO today pledged to continue and step up its bombing offensive against Yugoslavia, declaring that the downing of an American stealth fighter bomber near Belgrade makes no difference to its campaign. The pilot is now safe after being picked up by a combat rescue team. This morning, our correspondent in Belgrade, Julian Manyon, joined an official Yugoslav trip to view the wreckage. His report includes some pictures from Yugoslav television.
The pride of America's stealth technology came down in a field 30 miles southwest of Belgrade. When Serbian cameras got there, the wreckage was still burning. NATO managed to rescue the pilot and airlift him to Italy. According to the Yugoslav army, the stealth fighter was shot down by a surface-to-air missile. Serbian television claimed that the invisible plane had not been invisible to Yugoslav radar. I was among a group of journalists taken to inspect some of the wreckage. The plane came down in pieces, and we were only allowed to see one wing because the Yugoslav army feared that NATO might bomb the main section of the wreckage to destroy any high-technology secrets it contains. The wing I saw had several small jagged holes, which might have been caused by shrapnel from a missile.
This will certainly be a boost for the Serbs after days in which NATO aircraft seem to be able to strike at will up and down the country. The Yugoslav authorities can finally claim to have scored a military success, including the capture of some top-secret American technology, and there's no doubt that they intend to make the most of it.
But NATO has made it clear that the bombing campaign will not be affected by the loss of the high-tech aircraft, and it seems that other stealth fighter bombers may well be in action over Serbia tonight. Julian Manyon, ITN, Belgrade.
Britain says it's deploying another 13 RAF warplanes to the NATO action. The announcement came as NATO commanders confirmed the campaign's now entered Phase 2, which will involve more dangerous low-level flying missions to target Yugoslav Serb ground forces in Kosovo. Kevin Dunn reports.
This afternoon, 4 more Harriers left RAF Wittering to join NATO's expanding air armada. 8 Tornado bombers will follow them to join an operation whose risks were underlined by last night's loss of the stealth fighter.
When you're dropping live ordnance against a heavily defended enemy, then there are always risks. We do our best through tactics, training and conditions to minimise those risks.
The government said the commitment of more aircraft sent a clear signal.
These additional aircraft and the wider action we are now planning will hit heavily at Milosevic's ability to pursue his murderous campaign in Kosovo. I don't use the term murderous lightly. We are confronting a regime which is intent on genocide.
The second phase of NATO's campaign means bombers will have to fly lower and slower, which may be why the stealth came down. The F-117 stealth fighter bomber, also known as the Nighthawk, is the first of a new generation of futuristic warplanes. Its curved and angular shape and radar-absorbent surface makes it invisible to the enemy. However, the plane is notoriously unstable, needing a combination of computerized technology and highly skilled flying. At NATO headquarters, despite the aircraft's loss, there was celebration of the pilot's rescue.
This complex, courageous, and extremely professionally orchestrated rescue serves as a wonderful example of our united capabilities.
These exclusive ITN pictures show the Harrier reinforcements being refueled on their way to southern Italy. They will be fully operational tomorrow. Kevin Dunn, ITN.
NATO says Kosovo is facing the worst humanitarian disaster since the Second World War as Yugoslav forces conduct a scorched earth policy. Refugees continue to pour across Kosovo's borders, where Serb forces are reinforcing their defences, as our correspondent Colin Baker witnessed at first hand.
1 hour after the sound of NATO's bombers faded in the mountains, Serb soldiers emerged from cover along the Kosovo border. Their positions now being strengthened and reinforced each day. They've also brought forward more armour to within a few score metres of the frontier. Hidden in the trees covering the border crossing, another Serb tank. On the road from Pristina below, movement is mostly arriving Serb military. These are Serb sappers checking minefields laid along the border within the last few days. One exploded during the night. Against the Geneva Convention, the minefields are unmarked and appear to cover the length of the border here with Macedonia. The positions that we've seen the Serbs take up today would seem to be of a defensive nature. That in itself suggests that they are prepared to resist any NATO advance. And every once in a while, a little convoy of civilians travelling the well-worn trail of misery. A quarter of Kosovo's Albanian population has been displaced, the numbers increasing daily. Many have crossed the mountains into Albania. Whatever they bring with them is outweighed by everlasting fear. It'll take some time before they realise they are the lucky ones who've escaped what now seems to be a programme of removal and sometimes extermination. And the young men and husbands are mostly missing. NATO's border patrols seem more frequent now, but it's not the Serbs who are coming, it's the people this operation was mounted to protect. Colin Baker, ITN, on the Macedonia-Kosovo border.
Gunmen armed with rocket launchers and automatic weapons attacked the American embassy in Moscow today in another public protest against the NATO campaign. It sparked a dramatic city centre shootout with the police. From Russia, Mark Webster reports.
Right in the middle of a busy Moscow street this afternoon, two men got out of this white Jeep outside the American embassy. This amateur video shows the men were armed with rocket launchers, so police opened fire, smashing the windows of the car. When one of the men shot back with an automatic rifle, police and passers-by hit the ground and the men drove off. Several bullets hit the embassy, though no one was injured. The rocket launchers were abandoned and the gunmen's